Today, Bitcoin and Ether both head for weekly losses. Regulators file lawsuits against the co-founder and former CEO of Voyager Digital. And James Koutoulas with Typhon Capital Management weighs in on crypto's role in the war between Israel and Hamas. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel. Cryptocurrencies are pretty much flat today, with Bitcoin and Ether both trading just slightly higher. Both are also heading for a losing week here. Bitcoin on pace for a 4% loss and set to snap its first 5-week win streak since February after erasing all of its October gains yesterday. It's currently trading under $27,000, so that's at the lower end of the narrow range it's been stuck in for months now. Ether down roughly 8% coming to the end of the second week in October. This would be its fourth negative week in 5. This is historically an upbeat period in crypto. Bitcoin has posted a monthly gain in 8 out of the last 10 Octobers. The market remains hampered, however, not just by low volatility and liquidity, but also higher rates now, which could cast a shadow over the crypto market for the rest of the quarter. Bitcoin is still widely seen as a good picture long term, but investors should expect continued chop for a couple of months here with limited upside. It's about 61% higher this year. Now, crypto equities have also been struggling, but they're actually outperforming Bitcoin. Global X's blockchain and Bitcoin strategy ETF up 67% this year. Its blockchain ETF up 70% this year, and then the Bitwise Crypto Industry Innovators ETF up 87% this year. Crypto stocks may be finding support now, according to Wolf Research. They said in a note this week that if those bases are for real, the next leg higher in crypto equities will have to come soon. Okay, let's kick off the headlines with an update on the SBF trial. We ended yesterday with the rest of Caroline Allison's testimony, then moved on to Christian Drapey, a former software engineer for Alameda. Drapey told the court that SBF weighed in on large Alameda transactions and that he had access to Alameda's trading data through software called Pointer, something Drapey says very few employees had access to, but he couldn't say whether SBF had accessed it. We also heard an audio recording from an all-hands meeting with Alameda employees after the company's collapse. In that recording, Allison explains that the company borrowed a bunch of money and that FTX had a shortfall of user funds. Drapey said he resigned within 24 hours of that meeting. All right, next up, the CFTC is suing bankrupt crypto lender Voyager Digital's co-founder and former CEO. On Thursday, the regulator charged Stephen Ehrlich with fraud and registration failures. The CFTC said Ehrlich and Voyager falsely touted the Voyager platform as a safe haven to earn high-yield returns in the hopes of convincing customers to purchase and store digital asset commodities. At the same time, on Thursday, Voyager reached a settlement with the FTC, which permanently bans it from handling customer assets. The agency also sued Stephen Ehrlich for claiming that customer accounts were insured by the FDIC. We actually talked about those claims on this show all the way back in July of 2022, when the Fed warned Voyager to stop telling customers their assets would be protected. The other big story this week is the war between Israel and Hamas. As the conflict in the region intensifies, more people are scrutinizing crypto's role in financing Hamas, which is sanctioned by U.S. regulators. Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio said on Wednesday that the Senate Banking Committee should look into crypto's involvement. So for our main story, Crypto World's Talia Kaplan spoke to James Koutoulas, the CEO of Typhon Capital Management, about how blockchain technology can help detect this kind of illicit activity.
The Wall Street Journal reported this week that Hamas militants behind the surprise attacks in Israel over the weekend raised millions in crypto, highlighting how the U.S. and Israel have struggled to cut off foreign funding to organizations like Hamas. How does this affect crypto's image, which has already taken a beating in the past year with events like the collapse of FTX?
Superficially, it's not great for the image, given that it was used as a mechanism for funding demonic, barbaric acts. However, you see how rapidly authorities have been able to use the blockchain technology and its public distributed ledger to trace donors, to freeze wallets and whatnot. So crypto is really a double-edged sword. It's quick, it's fast, it's cheap to transfer money. But the fact is, every single transaction done is memorialized forever on an immutable public blockchain. So it makes the forensic accounting and tracking down the supporters of this unspeakable evil actually a lot easier than going through the banking system or other forms of money laundering, such as watches, artwork, stamps. There's all manner of ways to transmit illicit funds.
Expanding on what you just brought up, this week we also learned Israeli police have reportedly frozen crypto accounts tied to Hamas, which has been designated a foreign terrorist organization by the US and has been sanctioned by officials here. Israeli business news outlet Koutoulas reported that authorities were able to freeze the accounts with the help of Binance. What is your reaction to that news, and how does it tie into the idea that blockchain technology can track this sort of illicit activity?
Yeah, a lot of people think of crypto as just this completely anonymous technology, but it's not, right? So, like Binance, once a wallet is identified as being belonging to Hamas or a member of Hamas, they are able to very quickly seize that, freeze it. There is no recourse on Hamas's part. And then, like I said earlier, those wallet addresses, those transaction IDs are immutable and public, so people can track down the donors. And it takes a bit of work, but the FBI was able to bust all sorts of illegal activity years ago on the famous Silk Road criminal website.
How incumbent is it upon crypto companies like Binance to track down crypto financed crime compared to law enforcement? How much of the responsibility should be put on those crypto firms?
Well, what we've seen in practice is it's really a joint effort. The cyber law enforcement world has really done incredible work over years and years tracking down illegal money laundering, and even in a case like this where it's like 90 some million, the traditional banking system, major banks have pled guilty to felony money laundering also within 10 years, approaching $1 trillion, like HSBC, JP Morgan, the biggest amongst them.
Do you see this sort of coordination between crypto companies and law enforcement becoming a normal thing as crypto crime becomes a mainstream concern?
Yeah, honestly, it already is. And it's a bit ironic that Binance has been so cooperative, as Binance has been the object of unconstitutional SEC enforcement actions, where in the absence of statutory authority, the SEC has sued major crypto exchanges such as Binance, such as Coinbase. But you see cooperation all the time between both of those exchanges and the US government to fight crime.
Pointing to another recent conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine also sparked fears that crypto was financing violence. How effective were sanctions or law enforcement actions at the start of that conflict? And are there any learning lessons from that war that can be implemented now?
Yeah, I mean, the sanctions, I think, were really effective in alienating a lot of US allies. And a lot of allies viewed those as overbroad. And FTX, which currently has the criminal trial going on, was actually really at the forefront of laundering money, it appears, in that conflict.
Speaking of FTX, you are a trial attorney. So, what do you make of SBF's trial going on right now? And what are the implications for the crypto industry?
Well, the evidence I've seen thus far is very damning. Things like creating a random number generator to display random amounts of customer balances after having paperwork saying that their funds would be segregated. That's really damning. And I think with pieces of evidence like that, SBF is going to be very hard pressed to claim that he didn't have intent when he used allegedly the customer segregated brokerage funds to fund the proprietary trading at Alameda. Long term for the crypto industry, this is a good thing. One of the problems has been the US has been so slow to implement laws and regulations, and only now, 12, 13 years into crypto's existence, is engaging in regulation by enforcement, which I believe to be unconstitutional, has really set crypto up where there's a lot of bad actors in very influential positions. So if you look at someone like SBF, who seems pretty obviously to likely be guilty, putting him behind bars would be great for the industry.
And of course, we're hearing from some of SBF's closest friends and former colleagues. They're testifying this week. We're hearing from Gary Wang, the co-founder of FTX, and SBF's former girlfriend, who was the CEO of Alameda Research, the sister hedge fund of FTX. And a lot of information is coming to the surface now, things that we didn't know before. So how does this all play into SBF's case? How is it going to impact his case?
I mean, 90% of what they have said is just deeply, deeply incriminating towards SBF. The 10% remainder, as a trial lawyer, you always have to question incentives. And the fact that Gary and Caroline have pled guilty, have received reduced sentences, presents a conflict of interest. So, well, I think what he's done is basically indefensible. I think the defense will try their best to highlight those potential conflicts and potentially question the credibility. But the mountain of evidence seems to be pretty overwhelming against SBF.
Do you expect SBF to testify during the trial? Would it behoove him to take the stand?
So yes and no, respectively. He seems to be an unabashed narcissist, and I think he has the delusion that he will be able to persuade the jury that this was all one big mistake and misunderstanding, and he's just a hippie with this crazy hair and disheveled, and he doesn't know what's going on. But the testimony has shown that he actually contrived that image to give plausible deniability to his fraud. So I do think he will testify. I do think he's arrogant to the point where he thinks that he could charm the jury, but I do not think it will be successful. And I do not think it's in his best interest, which then in turn is, of course, in the best interest of those who mean to do good in the crypto industry and put people like him in jail.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World this week. We'll be back again on Monday. We'll see you then.